I do think there are a lot of proposed solutions to all these measurement problems. And I think it's about philosophy in the end. You need to understand how those people think. Because algorithms, they do have opinions. The next post that you see on your feed, it's opinionated. So we do make decisions every day about the algorithm. And our decisions are made from a company that believes in putting branding into the equation and creating a unified system to marketing. So you can manage having a lower cost over time and a more solid baseline in organic channels.
What's up, everyone? Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Guta Tolmasquim, founder and CEO at Purple Metrics. After spending almost a decade at top branding agencies in Brazil, Guta founded and ran her own agency, where she rebranded over 200 plus startups. She sold that agency after 5 years to build Purple Metrics, a marketing attribution software with an algorithm that includes brand impact. In this episode, we explore the tangible outcomes of brand, like purchase intent and memory structures, how to build trust with measurement solutions, how to convince CFOs to fund brand marketing, and creating attribution algorithms that respect brand complexity. All that and a bunch more stuff after a super quick word from one of our awesome partners.
This episode is brought to you by Revenue Hero. You've invested thousands in your marketing funnel, targeted the right ICP, spent weeks A/B testing, and optimized for conversion at every step. Finally, a high-intent prospect fills out your demo form, and then nothing. Your nurtured lead sits in a queue while you chase them with, "How's Thursday at 2 p.m.? Meanwhile, your competitor is already on a discovery call. That's not just frustrating, that's revenue walking away. With Revenue Hero, you can qualify, route, and book leads with the right rep, so your team can start real conversations right away. For the ops folks listening, Revenue Hero syncs meeting data to your CRM, auto-credits no-shows, recalibrates when reps go on vacation, and has a ton of smart features you won't find anywhere else. If you're spending to drive demand, don't lose it at the last mile. Visit revenuehero.io/demo today.
Guta, thank you so much for your time today. Really excited to chat.
Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
We spent a lot of time on the show talking about vendors with consultants, about measurement and attribution, and many of the experts and products gravitate towards performance channel and like paid media. And the company you're running, Purple, was built with this like brand first approach to measurement and attribution. Maybe start by like bringing us back to the first moments when you realized there was a better way to measure brand.
Okay. So it's a great start. I actually recently I did this talk to 5,000 marketers, and I went into the branding history. I went into researching it. And what I realized is that at the beginning, like 1920s, 1930s, when brands started being added to the marketing departments, they were actually part of the sales team of marketing and performance, as you would call it now. And then at some point in history, around the 60s, the 70s, we started splitting branding from sales. And then we had those 90s with those big brands, Pepsi and Victoria's Secret and Playboy and all of that, those big brand building time periods in history. And then digital media came on, and we all started with their metrics, and tracking everything, every click. So it got split more and more, got more and more separated over the course of the last 20, 30 years. And I had a different story. So I started in growth marketing, in performance media.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, I don't want to work with that. All the respect, no offense, but it's not my thing. And then I went into branding, and I worked, I had almost 10 years experience with branding and advertising with enterprises, And I was like, it's too conceptual. Why don't we? So I always had, then I went into working with branding for startups. And those guys are crazy over measuring everything and data-driven everything. So I always had this brand oriented towards metrics career, which is very unusual. And I was like, why can't we measure it? And people got asking me that over and over again. But I think it was only when I was at my first company, seeing the results, because that's something interesting on working with startups. They only have money to do one thing at a time, money and energy, right?
Yeah.
So when they are rebranding or repositioning, they are only doing that. So it's easy to attribute because
Mm.
it's like I did it and sales increase and everything else it's like almost an A/B tested mindset mentality because you changed one thing and the rest remained the same. And I started to see immediate returns, not only long term, and measurable returns because they were measuring everything. So I was like, maybe there is a way. And then I started looking into it and decided to do something that was a better research tool. So let's do research because that's how everyone measures branding in a more efficient way, more technological way. Let's update brand research. And then I realized, and we did this product. We launched it. We were on our way to product market. I think we reached product market fit because we have companies using it up to today, and we haven't updated the products in a year. But then I was like, if we don't connect to money, to cash, to dollars, there's no point. I mean, no
Yeah.
one cares if you don't. No one cares about brand equity, Only brand marketers. I do care, but I mean, in general, you can't run a business on a self-declared purchase intent.
Yeah. The CFO doesn't care.
Doesn't care, and maybe the CMO shouldn't care as well. I mean, it's an information, but
Mhm.
it's not a decisive information that you should pivot your entire marketing strategy towards. So it wasn't like a pivoting moment where when I realized it was like, okay, maybe there's a better way, and then we were like moving towards that. I was moving towards that in the last maybe 10 years if you think about it, but actively in the last 4.
Gotcha. So now flash forward to the new product. You're focusing a bit more on tying those brand measurement ideas to actual dollars and revenue. And like something that we get a lot from this idea that like how does brand actually drive behaviors before we get into the dollars there? Like maybe you can
Mhm.
share some examples where brand investments shifted real business outcomes like incremental revenue, loyalty, LTV, or pricing power? What are some of the examples that come to mind?
Cool. So we did have some examples that were in mindset metrics. That's how it's called, right? So um, we had this client, and they are a bank, and they sponsored soccer team in the soccer championship. Soccer is huge in Brazil for
Mhm.
those of you that haven't. I mean, everyone knows. I mean, that's the only information about Brazil that's worldwide uh, known, right? No need for explain. But anyways, so it's a great marketing investment usually,
Mhm.
but it's very hard to track because it's not clickable and so on. So we saw that the soccer fans were more loyal, declaredly, how do you say that? More loyal to the brand. And this kind of pointed out to them where to look, because then they went into their data on the soccer fans base and saw less churn. And they were like, oh, now we have a really dollar connected result, right, to this, fewer churn. That was one insight for us that, oh, why don't we measure the dollar connected thing? But it's usually for our clients, it's about knowing what channels convert, even the organic ones. Because there's no organic. Right? Organic is a myth. It's just something that you don't know what generated it, but there is no organic. Uh, but then seeing influencers, for example, it's something that appears a lot. And they are like, oh, we had no idea. There was this client of us that they rebranded, so they had a no LinkedIn page and the new one, because they put every product in under the same brand name. So they had all these multiple LinkedIn profiles, and they were just about to discontinue it when they started using Purple Metrics, and they saw it was driving like over 10% of conversion from something that they would discontinue because no one clicks on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn doesn't allow links, basically, right? It does allow, but like it doesn't
Yeah,
get any
penalizes
reach.
you if you do.
Penalize it
Yeah, exactly.
like 20 times less.
Yeah.
Anyways, so people just go on LinkedIn and then they go on Google, wherever channel that you attribute to. So we started seeing these, and we started seeing these movements of how the money flows through the company. So all these campaigns are generating, we actually can tell our clients what generates branded search on Google. So you see, and how long it takes. So you can actually see the system working. So this generated that in 4 weeks, and that generated conversion in 3 weeks. So we're like, oh shit, I need to start planning my 4th of July campaign now.
When we talk about brand measurement, lots of folks think of terms like brand equity and brand lift studies. And I feel like that gets a bit of a fluffy reputation. And it's kind of the opposite when we talk about content. Folks are trying to force lead targets and MQL targets with content. And so it's like brand is this like top of funnel thing, and we're not really sure how to measure it except for like long-term studies. But content, that's way different. Let's put a lead target on that one. Talk to us about like the tangible outcomes of brand and the like other outcomes of content that you've kind of researched and investigated. Like on your site, you talk about like purchase intent, consideration sets, and memory structures. I found that really interesting. Maybe unpack that for us.
Cool. So branding is something very intangible, because what is it, right? But then when you start understanding what composes the brand perception, you go through content and maybe campaigns, awareness campaigns. People call it in all these different ways, but it's the same. Or referral, or community, or events, sponsoring things, being on podcasts, thought leadership. So you have all those actions, marketing actions and initiatives that we consider branding. Maybe not, maybe few do. And that is actually what drives behavior, right? Because the way that branding works is that it generates some type of memory. It's something that's made to last in your mind. And then by the time you go to market, by the time you are in market for some product, your brain downloads it somehow. So your brain goes, oh, that brand, this is their value prop, or this is how they differentiate from others, or something, some attribute, some an attribute that you associate with it. And it actually makes performance run faster. Your decision making is faster. That's there's research on that. So you just pick products more faster when you know something about the brand. So those you need to get it. So you can do 2 types of communications. You can activate some behavior. So I want Phil to click, to download, to subscribe, to experiment, to whatever. So that's one form of communication, which is activating a behavior. And then the other form is, let me tell Phil about my product and my set of differentiators and whatever I want to build in your memory structure. So understanding this balance is very important. And what people do with content is free behavior activating, right? but you can only do it. And sometimes you're like, oh, it went viral, but no one clicked. Yeah, because probably a different type of communication. It's something that I want to relate about. And then I'm probably going to act on it if I see something that activates my behavior. So it's always about this balance of two types, two forms of communication. And the interesting part of it is that, like a subway, they share the trails, so you can have the yellow line and green line running on the same tracks. And so you can have Instagram or TikTok and run two types of communications on it. And it's actually very effective. I've seen data from big techs, and they are doing this inserting branding creatives into performance campaigns. And it actually lifts the entire performance because it's just reminded you of who I am, and then I activate your behavior. So I think it's a more complex problem than what's generating sales. So let's just double down on that,
I love your subway analogy because too many people think of it as one or the other, the traditional like brand versus demand gen debates and which dollar do we invest in. And when you talk about this idea of educating the market versus getting people to act and click and buy, when you present those two options to a CFO or the CEO, most of the time they're going to gravitate towards the, well, yeah, this one's easier to track and we get dollars out of it. And the other one traditionally is a lot harder to track. And we don't know if people getting more educated is directly going to lead to more revenue. And you said that like this obsession with thinking in short term metrics is killing good marketing. And we don't always get to choose the time horizon though, when it comes to like leading marketing at startups or a bigger company. Like, what should marketers do when leadership demands results this quarter? Like, I feel like it's a bit like utopian to say that, like, and I agree with you 100%, but being able to say like we should do both, like we should educate the market, we should do brand investments, and not just demand gen and performance. But then, like, you meet with the CEO and, like, the metrics are red and the pressure is on and it's all about short-term wins and the turnover for a CMO is the shortest it's ever been right now. What pitches to CFOs don't work and what language does when the CEO says things like impressions and block views, like, don't pay
Mhm.
the bills? How do you counter that?
I love this question. And I think it's probably one of the reasons that I started, like I
Nice.
sold the first company and started the second one. And I always had good conversations with CFOs, with leaders. And let me just go back to one thing that you mentioned. I think we do have a problem with brand marketers right now because we are having this paradigm shift towards being more scientific and data driven. And I think most of the brand marketers are trapped in a conceptual past,
Mhm.
wondering about purpose and concept. And those are important things, but you need to understand how to connect that to business results and to talk um, the business, like a business strategy, and understand how a business work. So I think that's the first part of you cannot address a CFO in a brand marketing language because they will go like, "What? I, I, I can't even like I can't guess. I don't know how to talk to you.
Mhm.
I don't know what like the vibe this color gives. I can't connect. So I think that's an important part of uh, important shift that we need to do in the market. And let me talk to you in a like as you were a CFO. I'll talk to you in a P&L perspective. I think that's the only perspective that, and I get cash flow. My first company, we didn't have any investment, like not investors. Now we have like the top VC firm in Brazil, but in the past, like it was a couple girls, couple MacBooks. That was the initial the seed
Yeah.
investment for my first company.
Bootstrapped, yeah.
Bootstrap, like literally.
Mhm.
So I get it. I mean, it's nice that we are talking about the long term, but we need to be alive in the long term.
Right, exactly.
So how do we do it? All right. So, and I think there are two ways of addressing, like two business philosophies. One of them is the ones that I don't need to convince because they already believe in branding. And I think they are more common in the US and Europe than in LATAM. And that's our philosophy here. We don't call to act our clients. We don't tell them. We don't use imperative. We don't go shop, buy, and stuff. But those guys already understand the importance of branding. I'm talking now to the ones that doesn't.
Mhm.
Marketing is a cost. Performance marketing is a cost, right? So you need to add this cost to every product and to every service that you sell. So if you need to pay Google or Facebook, Meta or TikTok or whatever, TV, broadcast, whatever, to every product that you sell, then you need this portion of your margin, of your cost structure to go to marketing channels. And that's how you think about performance. How much do I need to bring this customer on every time they come buy from us? Problem is, it reaches a ceiling. It will only get more expensive. That's called saturation.
Mhm.
And it's because you already sold to the most obvious customers. And now you need to reach a more distant audience. And you need to impact the same people again and again because you don't know who is in market for your product, right? Maybe the platform knows, but not really 100%. So it will only get more expensive. But you need to have it in your cost structure, the performance marketing. That goes into cost, I mean, economically a cost. It goes into each product. What if, alongside with the cost, we had some investment, like it's a different line of budget that goes into investment, that goes into decreasing this cost over time. So we will invest in things that generate themselves over time. So the larger a brand is, the more sales it gets. It's been proven
Mhm.
1,000 times in research. Because more purchase, more buyers generate more buyers. And a larger audience generates more audience. So that's organic, right? So what if we could create something that lasts in people's minds and that over time it will decrease our individual cost of marketing because it will generate a baseline of customers that come back to us. Call it branding, call it wherever. It's building stuff that decreases your cost and it goes into the, it's not a cost. It's how do you call it in English? Like it's an investment. It's an expense,
Right.
right? It's an expense that they say in English. Yeah. So that's it. All right, but we don't have money to do it. All right, would you give me 5% budget to test? 5%. I mean, every CFO agrees to a 5% budget testing into anything that will bring more immediate results. I'm talking about a month, couple weeks. That's it. So you should start doing branding to things that will generate immediate returns, and then you will expand your time horizon as you grow your audience, because then you're reaching people that buy less frequently from your category. So, yeah, so I think that's the way to think economically in a business way about how to invest in branding. It's not that let's do this huge campaign and spend all of our budget in crafting a message that we don't even know if it works, if it connects with clients.
What's an example that you have in your head of like a 5% budget that's going to lead to returns in like a week or two or 1 month? That's like a brand investment. Give us an example.
I can give you one that we did here.
Yeah, sure.
So we started a TikTok. We were the first B2B TikTok big account in Brazil, like big viral reach. The TikTok team used us as a use case multiple times.
Nice.
And so we had no budget because we are a tiny startup in Brazil. It's always about looking at the audience, at your clients. So we had this WhatsApp group. We always built community. It was always part of our marketing strategy. And they went on and on about using TikTok. It was a couple years ago, maybe 2 years ago. Yeah. So, and marketers were like, are you guys on TikTok? Because I need to run this campaign, but it's all about kids dancing and I don't really feel it. And I was like, they're all bored on TikTok during work hours. It's not a social network like to them because they don't have friends on TikTok and they don't get interesting content in Portuguese. So let me make videos about branding. And I started talking about how to drive results using branding. Now we have over 1 million views, 1 million likes, and almost 100,000 followers. And I'm a LinkedIn top voice and so on. So it grew bigger. But by the time we started doing videos on TikTok on my spare time and listening to like reading the comments and talking to people and seeing how they would react to the content and make more of it. And then it grew from there. So it wasn't really a 5% budget. It was a 5% energy. Let's call it like that. But I think it's like that. You need to observe how your client is buying and where they are at and what they value about you and about your brand. And then do this one channel, one thing, see how people respond, and then expand from there, and then pick a second one, and so on.
Very cool. I love the way that you break this down for a CFO instead of saying we need a 5% budget to do branding and we need branding involved in this because it's mindshare, it's perception, it's going to help sales in the long run, if not like in the medium term. You're kind of flipping that script a little bit and saying, instead of calling it branding, let's just say there's this thing we can do that's going to reduce the cost of acquisition. It's going to reduce the cost of marketing in the medium term, and it can even happen in the short term. And I don't know, for a CFO, I feel like that's an interesting way to say it because as soon as you say branding, the perception is long term, hard to measure, won't see this in like 6 months, a year from now. So I like how you're saying this thing that we're gonna do, we don't need to call it branding, but it's gonna reduce CAC and it might have immediate returns on that. But like the TikTok example that you just gave, like were you seeing like results within 1 week of that? Like what was the CFO's first reaction like when you first did this?
Yeah, we track through our product. We can see the time lag of returns, and some brand actions do happen immediately. Do have immediate or 1 week conversion time lag. But to this TikTok, I think it went viral like very early on, probably the second video. And then our sales rep started telling us that the leads were watching. And then we started having more leads. Well, oh, I think that's TikTok because that's the only thing that we did. I don't recall if it was like immediate, but it was like before I gave up on making.
That's always a strong signal when the sales team says that it starts showing up in sales conversations.
It's qualitative branding, right?
Right.
Because before you can really measure, before you have a product like ours, it's reading it's a bit of feeling, and that's what. At the same time, if you talk about numbers with the branding person, their brain shuts down. And if you talk about concept and brand to a CFO, their brand shuts down. So that's the difficulty of this conversation.
Yeah.
And but they do know deep down, because I've seen CFOs go on and tell like, why don't we hire this influencer? They know it works, right? And sometimes they go, oh, I've listened to this podcast. It's Humans of Martech, and we should definitely sponsor that. Right? So they do think of branding actions sometimes. They get it. The problem is it's very hard to bet on something that you don't have data to back it up. And if you are only doing one thing, it's easier. But if you are somehow mid-sized to large company, you're doing all these things at the same time. And how would you commit to something if you can't measure? So that's why I think we do need like a unified measurement. That's part of our pivot from research, because we were measuring only branding. And I think the changing marketing needs a unified model where you can see everything.
This episode is brought to you by MoEngage and their new warehouse native CEP, which revolutionizes the way data should be seamlessly fetched, analyzed, and activated. Now you can use MoEngage Cloud Data Sync to sync your warehouse data with MoEngage and use it to segment audiences or personalize messages without any development. Just set and forget. Use MoEngage warehouse segments to create segments on your warehouse data without moving underlying events, properties, or proprietary segmentation logic, and activate them directly on MoEngage. Using warehouse data analytics, brands can also directly generate insights from their warehouse data. Your long search solution for seamless data sync, smarter segmentation, dynamic personalization, and delightful customer experiences ends here. Warehouse native CEP from MoEngage, making it easy, smart, and secure. Learn more at moengage.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Knack. I have the amazing pleasure of chatting with some of the greatest minds in marketing operations, but you'd be shocked at how many of them have the same issues when it comes to their campaign creation process. They're dealing with things like scaling, personalization, keeping assets on brand, render testing emails, working in rigid templates, and worst of all, having to hand code emails. But many of the leaders in the space are using Knack to eliminate these headaches. Knack is a no-code email and landing page creation platform that covers initial campaign requests right until the sync to your marketing automation platform. Knack improves the whole campaign creation process by bringing the building, optimization, testing, collaboration, and also translation functions all in a single spot. So you don't have to jump around and coordinate feedback between a bunch of different people or wait on developers for very simple edits. Because at the end of the day, marketing ops folks want to focus on process and efficiency. Marketers want to focus on creativity, and Knack makes sure you get both and then some. Check them out at knack.com. That's KNAK, and tell them we sent you. Maybe give us another example. I'm curious, because you're sitting on a lot of data from customers using the product now, and like you said, it's not just branding stuff, but you get to see and tell customers what is working and what is driving revenue. By looking at this data, like what are some examples that come to mind that were maybe like a bit surprising to you, or you think in the market people assume they are undervalued or underrated and not enough people do those things? What are examples that come to mind?
I like the examples that are not the same within clients. So for example, influencers, they work for some clients and don't work for other clients. So that's interesting. And PR is something very difficult to track. Not because it doesn't work, but because we don't have real numbers. I don't know how many people have seen my article that I published last week on the largest business magazine in Brazil. I don't know how many. What will I add to the model in terms of data? So that's very difficult. But we do see TikTok awareness campaigns generating results or generating other things. Like that's what I like the most when I see TikTok generates blog views. Because then you try to understand the consumer journey somehow, right? Oh, they discovered there and they went on to this and then they bought, or they started a free trial. And there's a client of ours that's spending less and selling more.
Hmm.
So, because it's about the abruptment of things that you do. It's not because people like this idea of a magic channel, right? Because it's easy, but it's actually the composition. So I think that's another insight. It's about the composition. And then there's another that just happened. There's a client of ours that so TV broadcasts in Brazil are huge. Um, so we have every day the audience of the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
That's how big, like every day there is a Super Bowl on TV here in terms of audience. So it's crazy. And so they did TV and it worked. And they decided to do it again, a new flight. And they did the investment and the algorithm forecasted like a huge sale and like a peak. But then it was wrong, like they didn't sell. They were
Hmm.
like, oh, even the algorithm thought that we would sell and we didn't. So they went back to analyze creative and what else was happening. So it's also about, okay, it should have sold from like you made the right call, but somehow something changed. So that's also something about forecasting that's it's a little bit, well, it doesn't always happen as forecasted because things change.
Hmm.
And there's another case which like recent one as well. We saw this huge increase in baseline unattributed sales conversions, and we're like, what what's wrong with the model? Like, is the algorithm wrong? And then we went to talk to the client, like ready to listen a lot, like, and they were like, oh, it's about the new legislation.
Hmm.
And we're like, oh, really? Yeah, because there was something that they couldn't communicate because of some change in the legislation. But they had the big, like a big player lead sales to them because they became a partner in this new structure.
Hmm.
So they got a lot of clients from this business partnership. They could not communicate. So it wasn't attributed to any marketing channel. And that's true because they couldn't communicate. But it did increase in sales, so they had a peak. So it's interesting to see that those type of uh, like early technology things. Like I remember, like in the beginning of the iPhone, that you would like shift it and these things would move, and we were like, "Oh God, look at it!" I think we are in this of discovery.
Very cool. I appreciate you sharing that. So let's get into the product a little bit because, like, if folks are listening and thinking, like, all right, sounds really cool. It's amazing that you can get this data. How are you actually getting this data? So the product that you launched in the summer of last year in
Mhm.
2024, you're attributing marketing efforts and you're showing actual impact on business results. You're including branding actions in there that usually get left out of a lot of click-based attribution models that we have today. So you're including things like influencers, PR, out-of-home media, sponsorship, podcasts, organic content. You do this by using statistical modeling on top of data the company already owns. But we were
True.
chatting before we press record. Like, I feel we're in this like dark age of marketing measurement. A previous guest said this on the show where like marketing leaders don't know what to trust. Like, is it MMM that I should do? Is it incrementality? Is it MTA? Is it causal attribution? Some experts claim that like this is the thing that you should be doing, and others are saying that's terrible. And here's what's wrong about it. And like the things are changing all the time. A lot of strong opinions about it. Some people say that causality is actually impossible to do in marketing. We only have correlation. How do you build trust with buyers that your solution gives truthful data when you say actual impact? Like, how do we know it's actual? What are your thoughts there, Guta?
Mhm. I love this. What a time, right, to be on marketing.
It's true.
I do love it because it's a shift of paradigm in two ways. We're going through a shift in paradigm in terms of data-driven approach to marketing, in terms of mentality and ethos. But we are always also going through a shift in technology through LLMs, right? So there are two revolutions going on in marketing
Mm.
at the same time. And then there's a cultural one as well, post-COVID. We are working differently. We are more global and all those things. All right. So how do we build trust? That was your question, not about the environment. But I do believe that, and I'm living both changes of paradigm at the same time in tech and in marketing. And I think the answer to both of them is community. And I don't think that someone alone can change an entire industry. I don't believe in a genius cracking the code. It took us 4 years to reach this product. Why? Because on the first product that was branding research, we read all those academic papers. I can't even recall, like over 30, 40. And I talked to all those, academics, my family is super academic. And then we went on to produce content. And I talked, when we started this, when we decided to pivot, I posted like, can you share with me your metrics spreadsheet? And I got like obviously blank, but the structure of the spreadsheets of like the top 10 companies in because they shared with me. Our clients, they share links like, let me show you how we are A/B testing. Let me show. We are officially launching because we pre-launched the product with 10 companies using to train the algorithm. And on Friday, we will launch officially. Like anyone can buy Purple Metrics from Friday on. So now when people are listening, they can already buy it. But I don't believe in building it alone. I think it's about the conversations, and that's why I think we are doing such a great job on talking to all these people building, because all these opinions are important. Why they can't see causation? We see causation.
Mhm.
But it's a different statistic modeling and probably won't fit like the Leslie measurement. I know the context in which they told it because I did listen to this episode, which is a great one. And so I think this conversation is very important. And I think it's about creating this movement on we need to measure, we need to be more scientific, but it's not about last click. It's not about only generating sales because that's generating anxiety and it reaches a ceiling. We need to build a different type of relation with our clients. And I think markets evolve to that. If you think about economics, behavioral economics, it's a little bit adding data to psychology. And then if you think of every discipline, it evolves like that. And it's about movement and it's about benchmarking. It's about testing. So when a client of ours looks at it and says, well, yeah, because there is a change in legislation and it showed here. And you have like the part that's trackable makes a lot of sense with what we are seeing in MTAs or in click-based measurement. That makes sense. Like the forecasts are the same. So it's about that and evolving the algorithm with data. Always a good idea. And I think being aware of academic research. I think marketing is very distant from academia compared to other disciplines. And I think we need to close the gap.
Very cool. Yeah, maybe we can chat about an example. So, like Purple Metrics customers can see, for example, if like the LinkedIn post from their founder drove more Google searches, which then drove lead conversions or sales. And you're essentially giving data on like how long this ripple effect takes to happen for customers. To me, like, this feels really hard to do. Like, a lot of folks claim to be able to do this, and, like, seeing the relationship between a post and website traffic is pretty clear. Even though LinkedIn doesn't have, like, links all the time in the post, you can still see source traffic, but modeling the delay feels nearly impossible, like, especially in B2B. Are folks just better off asking, where did you hear about us on a form? Are you also including qualitative data in the data that you're sharing with customers? Maybe chat about that a bit.
Well, we shifted from that product, right? So
Right.
I, I have a strong opinion. But yeah, you can always ask people as a way to fact check, let's say. But when you ask someone, you'll see what has the higher memory structure in their head. And sometimes they just mark anything because I don't, it's just so much, right? And you go like, yeah, whatever my
Yeah.
friend told
First answer done.
first. Yeah, sounds like LinkedIn. Just one thing, we don't see how this LinkedIn post generated sales. We see how LinkedIn reach from a specific week generated something else.
Okay.
You can't attribute to any specific because you need to aggregate the data. Otherwise, you would have too many variables. So why not just like, why don't do the easy path? And I think the answer is because people can't run a business on declared answers. That's why we should, I mean, it would be easier if we could trust like your brand perception matched with your brand, with your declared behavior. That's what we were doing, and I think it's easier. And I think it's valid. I mean, it would become a nice business. Not a huge one, but a nice business. It's a product. People were using the product. But I think your question is more about, it's really hard. And I think no one did it because no one really tried to. Because I think we have so much to unpack in terms of measurement. We need to solve clicks in a cookieless era. We have this customer data platforms challenge as well. We do need to fix creatives in an AI era. So we have all these problems in marketing that needs to be solved. And I don't think that there's someone from branding that really gets branding that try to do something about like a data-driven approach to it. So it took me like almost a year to start this company because I was like, someone might have solved it already, right? Because it's a big problem. But I think, I don't know why. I think people that they tried to do brand tracking in a more technological way. And using AI, there are a lot of nice solutions. And I do think there are a lot of proposed solutions to all these measurement problems. And I think it's about philosophy in the end. You need to understand how those people think and because algorithms, they do have opinions. And the next post that you see on your feed, it's opinionated. So we do make decisions every day about the algorithm. And our decisions are made from a company that believes in building together with its clients, putting branding into the equation, and creating a unified system to marketing. So you can manage like having a lower cost over time and a more solid baseline in organic channels. So this is what we believe in. And if you don't believe in it, if you believe in a more like in a media buying that's more effective within like the refinement of the media channels, we are probably not the best supplier. So I think marketers will start to think on, what do I believe in, and look for a provider, an algorithm that's built for it. Because I mean, you have open sources, you have like, you can go for it. Like so it's still early days of this market. And I think time will tell. And when we see the client like confirming what they are seeing on the algorithm, and it makes me a bit more I remember on early days, I was like, I went to our like lead data scientist lead. I was like, would you like? I know the algorithm is saying to do that, but would you do it if you were the CMO?
Yeah.
Would you? What would you do? And he answered, no, I wouldn't. I'm like,
Huh.
fuck.
Shit.
Shit. What happened? And then he went on to say, look, I believe the algorithm is 100% right. But I think you might reach the same with less shift in marketing. Like the same, like very similar result, changing a little bit less. But then you wouldn't have to, because when, like, it's easy for an algorithm to say, take it from Google and put it on TikTok or on out of home, like billboards. It's a different team. It's a different agency.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a different everything, like a
Yeah.
different campaign. So it's not that simple to
Yeah.
shift money around. It's not like my investment banking, whatever, that I can just buy Bitcoin, it's not like that. So, and that's when we developed something that we call baby steps. So there is a safety lock in the algorithm that doesn't show the entire shift it proposed. And it shows like part of it. So the marketer can shift like money, and then the algorithm will learn and improve the recommendation for the next week. So I think it's a process of evolvement and building together. Like that's something that we ask, like I asked him, but we could ask our clients and we see how they react to things and we input that into the algorithm. So we'll get better over time. And I think the entire market will get better.
Very cool. I'm curious to ask you, like, how white box is the algorithm? Is it like a black box? Maybe you're thinking about this already, but like, I think the future of this space is allowing your clients to have a conversation with the algorithm. When it suggests something, you get to have a conversation. Like, all right, why? Like, unpack why you're suggesting we shift everything to out of home. Show me the data points behind that recommendation. And if I give you a bit more context on the legislation that just came out locally on that might have triggered that thing, or like there's this economic shift that's maybe like Trump in the US said this on Truth Social, like giving it a bit more data and then seeing like having that conversation going back and forth. Maybe you're thinking about that already, but like
I am. It's interesting, your point of view. And I am in a slightly different way. I think we will have more conversational front-end UX. And we do it, right? So when I see some like this baseline pick, what happened is that our CS team went to talk to the engineers and they were like, what the fuck? And the data scientists went back and said, look, the data is correct.
Yeah.
And then they were like, all right, let's talk to the client and see if it makes sense. So I think this what's going on. And the algorithm will probably answer, look, the data is correct. I mean, you don't have missing data and it's consistent and it's it will provide you with some answer. But I think something that annoys me is that the algorithm is blind. It doesn't know what goes on Instagram. It only knows it had more reach or more likes, and then that it probably sold more, brought more leads on. So I'm thinking about ways to inputting this data into the algorithm, but I think it needs to be in a more systematic way. I don't think it will be Phil telling the algorithm that Trump said something.
Yeah.
I think it will be more like what happened there in a more qualitative way, but doing it automatically. So that's what I'm testing in our lab right now. So I would love to have like this new version of the product that's more qualitative in terms of insights and more conversational. But I think like in a year, maybe, I don't think it's a short-term thing. And I do think that sometimes, Trump will say things and it will shift the economy and a war will start and it will shift the economy. And if you think about it, when I use any prediction algorithm, that happens, right? So if I get into a car to a road trip, like if I go to the next neighborhood, it will probably be very accurate, Waze or Google Maps. But if I'm going to a different city, if I'm driving 100 miles, a couple 100 miles, it will probably be somehow wrong. But I'm okay with that because I know that's the prediction from the time I went out, and that's what I wanted. And I understand if something happened on the road on the way. And when I'm packing to go to a different city in a different country, I know that the temperature won't be precisely that. I might put in an extra jacket or, bring in a swimsuit because just in case. So we are used to predicting those type of things in our daily lives. And I think we'll get more used to it in marketing. So we'll probably get more used to, that was the forecast, but we messed up with something or something nice happened along the ways. We have a way in the algorithm to see if something's trending, which means the algorithm forecasted fewer sales from it. Somehow it's selling more because you did something. Go look at it. I don't know. Go look at it. The prediction is different from reality. And like in a suitcase, you don't really need to know about the cold masses that generated the temperature drop. But maybe on the road, you do want to know that there was an accident. In marketing, you do want to know what happened that generated the different outcome from the predicted one. So I think it's part of the maturement of the market. Yeah, but I think we'll be in a very different place in a few years.
Very cool. It's exciting and yeah, really interesting to hear your point of view on that as you're building and testing stuff out in the lab with stuff that's already out. I got two last questions for you, and we're running up on time.
Okay, so I'll be fast.
This one topic with attribution, like I feel like attribution gets like a really bad rep because oftentimes a CMO will buy the attribution tool to justify their existence. And they will say that they want to like invest here and invest there. And then they buy the MTA tool, and the MTA tool allows them to like tweak the levers. Like, oh, we're going to do W shaped instead of U shaped because my brand investment looks way better. There's way more credit given it to it there. So like, how do you think marketers should react when their data challenges the data that you show challenges their instincts? And how are you building Purple to service those uncomfortable truths without turning it into like a self-congratulatory performance tool that just like validates everything you're already doing?
That's a great question, and I think it's my answer goes to the company leadership because I think it's about company culture. I do see, like, I have clients that rather churn, like they prefer churning, like canceling Purple metrics, than facing the fact that their branding is not working. Yeah, so that's true. And the more a company gets political, the more like those things starts happening. And I think we need to sponsor cultures when it's okay to fail and learn. So if a CEO cannot get to the board and said, we did it, we have a client and they were laughing because we were like, what's this about? And they were like, oh yeah, we messed up. Learned about it, next. So that's a great culture. And I think you need to be ready to have data. So most CEOs will tell you, most board members will tell you they want data. But if they don't want, that means if you want to be more scientific, science is about learning by experimentation, which means failing and not failing and learning from it. That's all about that. That's what it's all about. That. So if a CEO, a board member wants to be more data driven, it should mean there should be room for failure within the company. And if a CMO is concealing their mistakes, it's probably because they're afraid they will be fired if they show this. So it's about, we need to start to having these stuff. When someone says, where's the data? Like, can you handle being wrong, us being wrong? Like, we'll do everything to be right, but we will fail sometimes. So we need to be open. I need to be able to be open about it. Can I? Let's agree on the strategy. Let's make sure when we make the decisions, we were backed by data and we were certain that this was the best test, the best
Yeah.
we could do right now. With the information that we do have right now, but in the future, we'll have new information. We cannot penalize our, like, today, our present selves on information that we'll get in the future. So I think that's a cultural shift.
Yeah.
And I think some companies will get there faster than others.
That's such a good point. It's like almost having psychological safety in that culture of data and knowing that if we try something and it fails, like it's okay, and we're not gonna cut funding to marketing just because there's one failed experiment, as long as we're all aligned on this is the way that we're measuring this, and we're bought in there. Love your answer there, Guda. I got one last question for you. You're obviously a CEO. You're known as the queen of branding in Brazil, but you're also an avid urban life traveler. You're big time in sports, and you also are a bookworm. You got a ton of stuff going on in your life. One question we ask everyone on the show is, how do you remain happy and successful in your career? And how do you find balance between all the stuff you're working on while staying happy?
I love this. That's the final question. And I learned so much from other people's happiness systems. As a designer slash branding slash product person, I approach it like a product, and I think it's something that you need to build up from on top of. Like, you need to start and then build features on top of features. And so now I'm very aware of the things that may make me feel good, which is sports. In my routine, I need to be around water like once every something. I'm from Rio. I grew up in Rio. We have like the beach, the sea. I need to go back to the ocean like every once in a while. I need to be around my friends. I need to be reading. I love this pulsing movement of the city. So I structure my routine in a way that I make sure I'll have time with my friends. I'll be traveling every once in a while. I'll be like, all these things. And I need to have this intellectual challenge. So talking to people like you, or even listening to podcasts or reading. So I understand the function, quote unquote, of the stuff that makes me happy and try to add it to the system. And I also have this like a bug report when something's wrong, like why am I so tired? Why am I so stressed? So I try to understand those signals, like those metrics on unhappiness, and then I unpack, why am I so stressed out? What's missing? Oh, I'm not eating right. I'm not sleeping well. I'm not. So I go back to fixing the system. So that's my approach. And it's a constant. You can't, like, you need to dedicate time to it. Otherwise, you just get run over by work or routine, and then
Do you also have a product roadmap for it?
I do have a little bit
Nice.
things that I wanna do, but I try not to be so long, like, because the long term generates anxiety.
Yeah.
So I have a list of books that I want to read, and I always know where I'm traveling next. So those type of like small
Very
roadmap.
cool. Love the analogy there. No one's ever said that on the show.
Really?
Yeah. Think of your happiness and balance in life as a product. I think it makes sense for you, obviously, building a product and tracking the effectiveness of other companies' marketing. So yeah, love your answer. Guta is super fun. We'll link out to Purple Metrics and the blog. I think the TikTok also. I've also
It's
been
in Portuguese though, but I did record a few videos in English recently.
Nice.
So
And the LinkedIn stuff that you repost too, like LinkedIn has like native translation in there,
True.
so I was able to catch up with a few ones. I think what you're doing is really, really cool, and I really appreciate you sitting down with me for an hour. Thank you so much for your time.
thanks. Same here. Thank you so much.
The #1 conference for marketing ops and revenue ops professionals is back again this year. Block off your calendars from October 27th to the 29th in Anaheim, California. Grab your tickets at mopsapalooza.com while you enjoy some of the highlights from last year.